Welcome to the business case for brand homes. We have Cynthia Jones with us today. We've got Christian Lachelle with us today. We've got a lot to get through. Really interesting conversation ahead. Before we get into it, some housekeeping items for everyone. Number one, Q&A. This is a live conversation, so please submit questions. The three of us are going to be chatting, asking each other some questions, but if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will try to loop them into the conversation. Number two, you can configure your audio settings at the bottom left of your screen on Zoom. You can tweet at us at AnyRoad. And we are recording this. So if you are seeing this live, you can get a copy of it. And if you are not, you're probably getting it because we're recording it. So wonderful. Let's jump into a quick round of introductions. I'll start. I'm Daniel Yaffe from AnyRoad, Chief Operating Officer. For those of you who are less familiar, we were founded in 2012. We're an experiential data platform for brands to scale and optimize customer experiences that change behavior. So companies like Fisker, Anheuser-Busch, Michaels, H-E-B Grocery, and Dick's Sporting Goods all count on AnyRoad for everything experiential, from activations to appointments to tours, museums, and classes. Christian, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Christian Lachelle, Chief Creative Officer for BRC Imagination Arts. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year in the experiential space. We're a strategic design and production agency and company that focuses on human experience and really creating experiences that move audiences and transform stories into things that are meaningful and places, and have had the good fortune to work with Daniel on some projects and also Cynthia. So really excited to be here.
Great. Thanks so much, Christian.
And I'm Cynthia Jones. I'm the General Manager of Innovation Experiences for the Henry Ford, which is a funny title that allows you to do almost anything. But my job is largely focused around exhibitions and operations for the Ford Rouge Factory Tour and Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's just jump into that. I would love to hear a little bit more about the Henry Ford. What do you guys encompass? I've got a slide to walk through this, but hear it all from you, and that'll place the conversation for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. So the Henry Ford, you might know us from our TV show on CBS, which I don't have on this, the Henry Ford's Innovation Nation. We're a 91-year-old museum complex. We like to think of ourselves as America's greatest history attraction. And we're this fascinating combination of all sorts of different business operations. So we started as a school, we continue as a school, we have our own on-site high school. We are an indoor museum, the Museum of American Innovation. We are an outdoor living history facility, Greenfield Village. We are a brand home, Ford Rouge Factory Tour, inside Ford's F-150 truck production facility. We're a research center, and we are so much more.
I love that. I love that. Can you tell us a little bit more about the origin story? I mean, how was the organization started way back in the day, 91 years ago?
Absolutely. So Henry Ford is kind of famous for saying this quote about all history is bunk, which a lot of people say, oh my gosh, how did he found a history museum? Well, he did, because that quote is really about his concept of history, that it shouldn't be from textbooks, that it should be from learning with the real deal, the real stuff, touching it, interacting with it. So he opened us as a museum. Our official name is actually the Edison Institute, because we're named in honor of his mentor and friend, Thomas Edison. And he opened as a school. He collected all sorts of objects, crazy things, from massive steam engines that he imported from England, buildings, so Thomas Edison's Menlo Park Laboratory, the Wright Brothers home and workshop, all sorts of amazing stuff that Henry Ford, being Henry Ford, he could purchase, take apart, and move here. And then over time, we've really become a museum that's focused on the idea of America as a place of invention and innovation. And what we're really interested in is unlocking this potential within all of us to be innovators. So we're an independent nonprofit. A lot of people think that, oh, you must be a car museum because you were founded by Henry Ford, or you must be part of Ford Motor Company. We're not. We have deep ties, deep relationship, but we're an independent nonprofit, and we're very entrepreneurial for a museum.
Love it. I definitely want to dive into some of that. Just high level, you talk about innovation as kind of the visionary piece. What do you guys measure? What are your goals with the organization? What are your KPIs, if you will?
Yeah, so we measure all sorts of things, and what we measure towards is our mission. So we're here to inspire people to create a better future. We're here to really engage with folks. So we measure engagement. We measure both in raw numbers, how many people come here, who's the audience that we're serving. But we also measure in terms of, are we reaching educational goals with folks? So how do they feel about the educational value of their visit? We also ask questions around hospitality, of course. So did they feel well served? Did they feel supported while they were here? How did our map do with them? Really some nitty gritty things, but some bigger picture things. And then we're thinking also about, with our Ford Rouge factory tour operation, you're getting to see real trucks made.
Yeah.
Do you think differently about Ford Motor Company after you see how they're making those trucks? And perhaps, are you more likely to buy one? So we ask those questions too, but we're very interested in thinking about how we're inspiring you to meet our mission. So how can we inspire you to be the innovator? We're still trying to figure out how to measure that. That one's harder to measure. So we're measuring it with our school groups, we're measuring it with our invention festivals, we're measuring it with, we're part of Harvard's impact analysis and really thinking about the innovation impact with schools and with kids. So we're doing all sorts of measurement.
And Cynthia, you guys developed this model called the Model I. Could you talk a little bit about that from an education standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the posters behind me. I actually keep it in my office. It's a good reminder for me with my work. So our learning and engagement folks actually, along with our curatorial team, dug into 90 years of our own history, looking at innovators and inventors, all of our collections, the interviews that we've done with people, and started to pull out, what are the common factors? What is the habit and the action of an innovator? And so, what we figured out was that there is this common set. And the important part of it is not even so much the specific habits and actions, those matter, but it's the mindset behind it. It's the fact that it is a habit, and a habit is something you can learn to do. You can apply it. It's not innate. You're not born with talent or not born with talent. You can grow these things. You can take actions that will make you or your work more innovative. And so we're teaching that in all sorts of ways. With our newest exhibition launching at the end of March, we're opening an amazing racing exhibition, Driven to Win. We actually built these habits and actions into all of the signage throughout the experience, so that you can look at someone like Lynn St. James and go, okay, she was one of the first women ever to race on that scale. What was the habit or action that helped her become someone who was courageous and able to compete at that level?
That's awesome. I love that. And the hope is that you are instilling that in the people who come through.
Yeah, absolutely. And if nothing else, my personal goal in the work that we do with this is the sense that you can do this, that you can learn to. I don't care whether you're 7 or you're 70 or you're 107, you can make something better. When I get up in the morning, I can think about this morning. It was really cold here in Detroit. Like, okay, how am I going to make my dog walk a better experience today? Because yesterday was pretty rough. So how can I innovate both what my dog's wearing, what I'm wearing. Maybe I put my scarf on a little bit differently. It can be teeny tiny actions.
Yeah.
And those teeny tiny actions can lead you into a mindset that does things like we have the Rosa Parks bus as part of our collection. What did it take for someone like Rosa Parks to say, I'm not giving up my seat. Today's the day that this changes. And so it can be those teeny tiny habits of our everyday life. When you start living with that mindset, it changes the bigger actions which change the world.
That's awesome. It's interesting you talk about the impact, which is in our framework is a 3-dimensional metric. And it sounds like you've had massive successes on that side. And then we also have in that framework 1-dimensional metrics, which are how many people came and how many people actually experienced what you've built. It sounds like on both of those, you've done incredibly well. I know that the annual visitors have gone up to 1.7 million guests, maybe in a non-COVID year, but yeah. Unfortunately, I'm just curious, when you think about the success, both in that 1-dimensional metric, massive growth, as well as the impact and how you guys are thinking about that, how did you get there?
Part of it was always having the mission in front of us. Why are we here to do this work? What is the point of doing this work? And then visionary thinking, what is our vision in doing the work? So, really thinking about, we rebranded ourselves back in the early 2000s, which is when we actually first started working with BRC. We said, we need a master plan for our museum because we are rethinking who we are and who we can be. And that was the first time we started thinking about we're a history attraction. We're not just a museum, we're a thing that's beyond a museum. Now we think of ourselves as a center of innovation, as a place where the archive of American innovation that we maintain, that we grow constantly, can be unleashed. So always having that mission and that vision mindset in place in the work that we do really matters for us. And then thinking about, growing the numbers. So, you referenced our pre-pandemic on-site visitation, 1.7 million people. That's massive. It took time to get there, and it took some real strategies about thinking about who does your content attract? How do you explain your content to people so they don't assume that you're Henry Ford Car Museum? That they can understand that you're a museum of American innovation, that you have all of these variety of things. It also took thinking about the array of experience that we have. So, we have this huge array. You can go 300 years back in time in Greenfield Village. You can go to tomorrow in the factory tour. And we span this array of time and these experiences. And it was important for us to have a variety of experience to attract people and to also bring them back. So how do you do something new that you're bringing them back for? What's that changing experience? We also started to think of ourselves beyond our local community. Our local community is very important to us. But we said, okay, who are we really reaching? What do our metrics say? Are we reaching people from the Midwest? Are we reaching people from across the United States? Now we are looking to make a global impact. So we're also asking the biggest question. So as we launched our invention convention, we have affiliates in Asia. We have affiliates in the Middle East. We have affiliates all over. And so now we think of ourselves in the biggest possible way as a global impact. But it really, in many ways, also comes back home to how am I helping Detroit? Who are my community partners here? So our metrics really address all of those things. And I think it was that strategy of thinking back to your mission, thinking back to your vision. How do you best serve the variety of audiences? And what's the array of product you can offer?
Awesome. That's awesome.
Just to go there, Daniel, maybe we can possibly look at just the one thing here, which is the Rouge factory tour, just because we were on this journey together. I mean, Cynthia and I have known each other 18 years, I think. but that's a really unusual, like that particular project. Like, I think there's a lot to sort of center around that, in the sense that how it came to be, Cynthia, you know, when we were working on the master plan work, and then this opportunity, really with Bill having this vision for the Rouge and not abandoning it. And at the Rouge for many, I mean, going back, I think to like 1924, they started offering tours at the Rouge back in the day, and they kind of bring that to life, because there's not very many places in the United States where you can see large scale manufacturing that is so historic, and also the change in manufacturing. Could you talk a little bit about the beginnings of that, but also, I think, you know, the unique relationship it has with the museum and with the other partner, which is the UAW.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
There's a lot here to talk about. So,
yeah, I think about this, you know, our talk today is centered a bit on mobility. And I think about the museum has obviously an amazing car collection from all different automakers. Out in our living history in Greenfield Village, you can ride in a Model T. You can understand how that happens. You can ride on a steam locomotive, all sorts of things. What the Rouge Experience offers is a different element of that. It's a deep dive. It allows us, we partnered with Ford Motor Company on this because they realized, like, they're an amazing mobility company. We're an amazing attraction experience company. We know how to welcome guests, how to tell stories in a way that's great for the guest. So we're partnered together on that. It's the only thing we do direct with Ford. And it's a fascinating piece because the Rouge complex, the Ford Rouge factory tour and the Rouge complex, the complex goes back to 1918. So it's been making automobiles and various pieces for the automotive industry for a very, very long time. It was on the chopping block, honestly. Like, there were multiple times that when you have a manufacturing facility that is that age, maybe it's easier just to close it down. Bill Ford was not willing to let that happen. So he has a very deep and passionate personal interest in the Rouge, obviously through his family, but he also has a passionate environmentalist bent. And so thinking about how you take a place that, you know, was a brownfield, that was a pollution site, that was really challenged, and say, okay, as a company, can we make trucks here in a way that actually makes the local community better, that makes the environment better, that makes the product better, that makes the workplace better? How do we do that? So he had a vision for that. Worked with Bill McDonough, and we opened as this crazy tour that combines a look at what was then the Guinness World Record largest living roof in the world. Today, I'm actually really glad we're not the largest, because it means we inspired people to build those things on that scale. And then we have had to constantly update and change the experience over time. So truck product changes every year. We can't change quite that fast, but we do change, we do update. We're constantly thinking about how you attract and tell a story in the best possible way. So working with BRC, when Ford announced the aluminum bodies of their truck, lightweighting, really thinking about that, we had to go back and say, is our story on target? Are we telling this in the way that we need to? How do we really think about this? So we rebuilt our experience. One of my favorite pieces, and it's really about kind of thinking about how do you tell a manufacturing story in a way that is Disney worthy, that is like top of the top. My favorite piece of some of the work we did was we actually got 2 production robots, and we were able to choreograph them into a show. And it's hysterical because the show is so good that we actually had to add a move at the end where the robots wave goodbye to the audience because people would not leave.
yeah.
And so we had to tell you, like, okay, it's over. Please, please go on and see actual trucks being made now.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, and especially one of the things we had on that litmus test was just, you know, can we keep young people engaged? Like, you know, can we get them off their phones? You know, And you have some great stories of different audiences coming through and that happening, right? I mean, it's just
yeah. No, one of my favorites, right after we had opened that show, we had a group from the School for the Deaf here in the Detroit area come through. And it's a very loud show. It's a very audible show. It's got a fantastic music. It's fantastic. So I'm thinking, okay, these folks are deaf. Okay, let's see how this goes. And they gave us a round of applause at the end because there's transducers in the floor. There's all sorts of things. Your seats shake. You experience what it's like to be in a truck racing across the desert. There's light flash. It's fantastic because it's full sensory experience. Huge ovation. And I was like, okay, got it. And I always watch tweens and teens. Can I engage them? I also watch, from my experience, for the factory tour, we're building trucks. I don't think you think of F-150s as like, oh, that's the place that mom is going to invite and bring the family to visit. So I always watch, how do the ladies experience it? How do the people like me? I don't have a manufacturing background. I'm not, I'm an anthropologist by training. So how is it interesting and fun for us? And I look at those metrics, Daniel, back to metrics. Like I look at satisfaction within our audience niches. And when I outscore with women, their satisfaction on a factory tour of F-150s, I know I did it right because I gave them something they didn't expect.
I love that. I have a quote up here about just the power of experiences. I want to pull the conversation back into the business case because I think this is why a lot of folks have joined us today. And I think it's really interesting, and also you're tied to the business side as a nonprofit. Before I do that, I actually want to run a quick poll the audience. So this is going to be a little bit more about the objectives which folks want to measure. So the question is, if you have a brand home or plan to launch one, what objective is most important for you to measure? So I'm going to launch the poll. It could be community impact, could be educational benefit, could be entertainment value, could be lifetime loyalty, could be direct sales, so for some brands, or could be other. I'm curious what people are thinking here. And Cynthia, I'm curious on your end too. It seems like it might be an amalgamation of some of these actually.
I actually wish you had an all of the above on there, except for the we don't measure, because I do measure and I measure very actively. But I think it's all of the above for us. It is also for us, especially the factory tour experience, it's also impact on attracting talent. It's impact on the workforce pride. There's a famous thing with Ford about we build quality. That's real. And I can tell you all of the ways that that's real, but it was pretty revolutionary to say to folks who build trucks all day, hey, I want to bring thousands of folks through to watch you work.
Yeah.
And so helping them understand that they have pride in their job. They're amazing at what they do. And they're so amazing. People want to pay money to come on a tour to watch them work. It's been just a fascinating piece for us over time to communicate that.
Yeah, that's huge. Let me end the poll and I'll see if I can share the results. So by far, lifetime loyalty is winning, with community impact coming in second. Really, really, really interesting.
Yeah. But I think Daniel, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because if this is something for you, Cynthia, to kind of maybe kind of outline, because when you talk about all these objectives, right, and benefits of a brand home space, like let's look at like the Rouge, right? There was the initial thing that we built, just to, get people on the tours. But as you started to live into that space, talk about all the different audiences. I mean, if you think about, we just touched on one, which is the future employees, but you have past employee pride, right? In that sense of long-term loyalty and love. You have people who had families who've, gone through there or had, family members. You have really other innovators and big thinkers. How does Bill Ford use this space? Can you talk about all the different ways that the space is used in the different audiences? Because I think it's not a one size fits all. I mean, the fact of the matter is you've got it was right. All of those categories are all there when you're doing the Rouge. So maybe you can talk about maybe each of them and different ways of how it's a benefit to Ford and to the museum and to the UAW, I think, looking
Absolutely.
at as stakeholders in this.
Absolutely. I think one of the pieces for Ford, there's so many about why Ford invests in this. Back in 2008, 2009, we went through a pretty epic recession. And we shut down truck production for 3 months. And I kept the tour open. I kept our brand home open, showing people a mostly dark, not running factory. And people thought I was crazy. And I said, no, I'm not crazy, because this is actually something that Ford Motor Company and more broadly the auto industry needs. How seeing actual production, how seeing the impact of a production facility really makes a difference in funding for the company, funding streams for the company. And it's not just your buyers of your product. So I was sharing, the very unusual experiences of taking folks through during the recession and taking Congress people through, taking senators through, and talking about, so this is a factory floor that if you were here most of the time would have 1,000 people working in it. And those 1,000 people make an impact in their community. So getting to community impact, like that's restaurants, that's businesses, that's all of the things that it takes to have our economy flourishing. And so one of the things that we've done for Ford is that we've created a very robust experience for them with their political tours, with their VIP tours. I've taken through all sorts of folks, folks from VW, folks from Toyota, folks from Apple, all over, because I think it's important to think about how a public-facing experience tells the story not only to the public, but also to your special guest. So, whether that is, as I said, a potential employee, whether it's the pride of past employees, grandparents showing it off to their grandkids. We have a lot of engineers here in the area that have migrated from Southeast Asia. And I can tell you, when their parents visit, they bring them on the tour to show them, this is America, this is why I'm proud of my job, this is also good to be here. It's also an opportunity, I think, to, we talk about corporate social responsibility oftentimes. You need to walk the walk on that. And so in our experience, because I'm an independent nonprofit, I'm not telling Ford's direct marketing story. I'm not selling you a truck. I'm telling you the history of the Rouge. I'm telling you why it's a place of innovation. It allows us to be a place where Ford can actually give me their data. How are they reducing carbon emissions? And if I research it and believe it's real, which it is, by the way, then I can work that into the story. The pandemic, Ford just did Project Apollo. They did amazing work early on in the pandemic. They made ventilators, they made masks, thousands upon thousands of masks. Now they've just released that they're thinking through and about to launch a clear N95 mask. So you could actually see me talk while I'm masked up. That's revolutionary. So really thinking about telling that story and connecting it over time is something we're doing. I think for us as a museum, benefits really clear, right? So we were able to partner with this major corporate piece. We're able to tell a story that is today and moving forward and not just historic and looking back. But I think that piece of it also expands to our main museum. So working with Ford in this very, tight shoulder to shoulder way within their site, telling their story, has taught me a tremendous amount about what it means to partner with someone, to really actively engage. So the old sponsorship model of just, oh, we're going to do some corporate good and we're going to throw up our banners at this whatever thing with this nice nonprofit. That's not what people want. That's not what a guest wants. That's not what a funder wants. That's frankly not what a nonprofit really wants. So working with Ford at the factory tour has given me experience and real chops on what does it take to walk the walk together. So with our new Driven to Win experience, it's full of sponsors and folks who have helped bring that. We have Rolex in there, we have Brembo in there, it's supported by and featured by General Motors inside the Henry Ford Museum. It's a pretty fascinating set of folks. And I love that we're doing that. And I also love that as a nonprofit, we've rethought our major funders. And we literally say, you are a partner in innovation with us. You're helping to activate our mission. And then we ask the question, what are we helping you to activate? Because I think it has to be that conversation.
Totally. We have about 10 minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, we have a couple that people pre-submitted.
Great.
Please chat them into the chat on the right-hand side. Christian, going back to you real quick, across a lot of your clients, it's interesting hearing Cynthia's story about how this all ties back from a funding perspective, from organizational perspective. What do you see as really building that business case for a brand home, particularly when it comes to mobility companies or transportation companies?
Well, Cynthia kind of really nailed it, right? Because I think there's revenue side of it, right? There's obvious benefits if you do an admission-based experience, and we all talk about that. And there's money that comes through the door through that piece. You can look at the F&B. You can look at events. One of the things I think happens here at the Rouge and some of the other projects we worked in, because we've worked with other auto companies around the world, there's a lot of event planning and things that you can do around that. And it's amazing stuff. But I think it's also this amazing strategic marketing asset for brands in a way that, tell me another location where you can serve so many different audiences, community, past employees, future employees. Everyone's competing, right? For talent. People are looking for other innovators are looking for a good win story. Something happens, for example, the Apollo project that links back to the history of the Rouge, going all the way back to the Arsenal of Democracy and what happened in World War II. So this becomes this really authentic place that's living its future. It's constantly evolving, but at the same time, we can tell a wide range of stories to a wide range of different audiences and have them all have a transformative experience, right? So the whole thing that we do as a human experience agency is really about how do people coming into something leave changed, So those kids, that school of the deaf kids, they had an experience that they would never forget. The same thing is happening for somebody like, I think there was like Mark Zuckerberg, there's shots of him walking with Bill through the factory and seeing what American innovation is. And, they come out of there changed. They come out thinking completely different. And you look at the E-Plant and you look at how Ford's evolving the Rouge into the future. This is a living, dynamic place. So I think there's all kinds of benefits. So you can put them in, obviously, if you do it right, you can wash your own face, or you may be able to even make money with these projects. Maybe in the case of like Ford and being here, there's a way to build loyalty and sort of convert people into actually seeing the product and seeing it built with the quality. Cynthia, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, the convert, like how people change coming through. But I think the other thing is that core strategic marketing asset that is done in an authentic way that doesn't feel salesy, doesn't feel like a marketing slogan. It really is the truth about what you're doing, and you're not just you're not just talking it, you're actually showing it, and people are getting active and they're experiencing it. And that's a big difference. Than I think a lot of the other things. It's not a showroom.
Yeah.
It's not just a place to sell a vehicle. It's so much more than that. The layers are all there. Cynthia, do you want to amplify any of that, or like even just in terms of people coming through on the loyalty question? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I think the loyalty one is a big one. So one of the things that we measure for the factory tour is likelihood to purchase product, and it goes up. So we see around a 50% increase in your likelihood to purchase a Ford product, and we get there by not being a marketing place. And I think that not being a direct marketing place is really important. I think brand homes largely were ahead of the curve on this. And I think marketing overall is caught up on this in many ways, that you sell your brand by the brand's mission. What are you here to do? Why do you matter? Why do you matter to your guest, in my experience, to your customer? And so for me to run a really solid brand home at the factory tour, one of the things I needed to have was, we show these things, we don't show these things. So I had to have a really clear set of things so that when, the latest and greatest idea at Ford came to me and said, ooh, we want to launch this product here, I would say that fits our story or it doesn't fit our story. So you're not mashing everything in. You know what story you're telling, why you're telling it. But it is also what's allowing us to tell the next story. So the electric F-150 is utterly game-changing. And so for us, we already know how to tell that story. And it's going to be amazing. It's already amazing. We're teasing it. You can see construction of the facility right outside my visitor center. Like, we're already moving with Ford on that story because it fits who we are, not because Ford wants to tell you, oh, we're going to build electric trucks. Like, it's more than that. It fits to the mission. Why is this place? How is this place a showcase of sustainability over time? How have we been a research and development location for Ford for 100+ years? So how does that all fit together?
Super interesting. One of the questions kind of tacking onto that somebody had submitted is, do you guys know which factors are the ones that actually drive that loyalty? And what is it about the experience, or have you been able to isolate what those levers are?
Yeah, so for the factory tour, I know a number of them because partly because I do a lot of word cloud in my response reviews. And so I know what things they say to me. Quality is huge, but authentically being able to assess how quality is built into a truck at the factory tour, because you're seeing it. And I can tell you, like, most people would have no idea to like come on the factory tour. And this actually included Ford dealers. So I've trained thousands of Ford dealers now. They didn't know all of the ways their truck that they're selling was inspected. They didn't know that every single truck goes through a simulated rainstorm to make sure that when you as a customer drive the truck through a rainstorm, it's going to be great. You're not going to have any leaks. You're not going to have any issues. You're not going to fog up. So it's seeing the real deal, understanding it, authentic, accessible, truthful. We show some of the blemishes about Ford's history there. We don't shy away from that. Christian, I think, was one of the ones who pushed us a bit on that. The workers pushed us on that. There was a difficult labor history there. We talk about that. And that's important that we talk about it honestly, because once I can say that to you, then when I tell you these other things, you are more likely to believe me. And so you're more likely to trust the product and buy the product.
Cool. This other question just came in. It's a long one. I'll synthesize it because I love this. And I think this actually talks to the core. And I don't know if this is, Cynthia, for you. You're obviously, the organization is a nonprofit, so it might be a little bit different. But how do you convince all the stakeholders of the contribution of the brand home in long-term growth of the product of the brand? Doesn't it end up becoming just about the profit, and that trumps all other objectives? Like, how do you keep focused with executives in the company?
Yeah, I actually think that's a great question. So I often say I wear a lot of hats, and I have to convince a lot of executives from a lot of different business lines that this really matters. So the UAW, the workers, they change leadership over time. So I need to have a relationship with their leaders. And that goes from the people that are on the assembly line, like leading that shift, all the way up to the folks who are leading the UAW. Similarly, every time there's a new CEO within the motor company, I need to be on their agenda to give them a tour, let them walk through and experience it. Because if I can get you in the door and you experience it, it's easy for me, but I got to get you in the door and experiencing it. But more importantly, so Alan Mulally is one of the famous recent folks at Ford, and Alan had just come on the company and he called up and he said, "Hey, I want to bring my mom on the tour." And I went, "Yes!" Because if I can get your mom through and your mom thinks well of you, then let me tell you, you're going to think really well of this experience. And so we did, and she had a great time. I also am always thinking about where the tour is positioned within Ford Motor Company. So who are my funders? Where are the funder streams coming from? Am I working with the right people? So for me, it's important that I'm working with folks in the sustainability section of Ford. It's important that I'm working with manufacturing folks. It's important that I'm working with marketing folks. It's incredibly important that I'm working with the chairman's office. I've hosted the entire board of Ford Motor Company multiple times. Like, it's very important from a huge array of relationships that they're maintained.
And I'll just sort of amplify and sort of deal it, the Rouge is a unique situation, right? So, obviously there's this partnership between the not-for-profit and the brand home space. On other projects, the same question, right? So if we're working in the drinks or spirits business, we help companies, in leadership around the world, build the case for the CapEx and for the funding and for the return. We've seen a great sort of movement from these projects being, just A&P money, advertising promotion, to actually being for profit. And oftentimes, like, for example, we're working more and more with retail teams, especially in things like luxury or spirits. And, we've been fortunate enough to work on some of the most successful business brand homes in the world. We know how to right size them. I mean, there's a lot to that. First of all, you have to understand what you're building and how to build it and what the scale of it is that's going to match your CapEx and your long-term operational costs. There are ways to measure, and Daniel, we do this together. We know how to measure loyalty. We know how to measure sort of long-term. We've done algorithmic studies going, like for some of the spirit companies we've worked with, 5 years later, we've followed up with people. We've seen the increase in loyalty and bottle sales. So we've got a lot of data that is unique, and we can show the benefits of that, but you have to make a really strong case. I mean, I hear you loud and clear. The question's a good one. That's all good, but everyone's focused on profit. Well, absolutely, we understand that. That's not, it's a unique situation at the Rouge. But we've worked with other auto companies where we have had a for-profit model on the brand home, and it builds that, but or it washes its own face. And we can also show the increase in loyalty or the increased purchase, and we can actually measure those sales. So the important thing is, are you hitting the bottom line, or is it improving your for example, with shareholders? If you're a public company and you're coming through and you are showing your future, a lot of times it goes back to a wide range of audiences, how the C-suite uses the place, how sales uses the place, but there's a lot that you can do, but you really have to build that case. You have to look at all of those factors, really have a strong strategic plan. You have to do the future planning. You have to build out that P&L. You have to look at all that stuff and make sure it's very robust, and we'll look out 10 years or longer on our strategic planning and development, and been very, very successful getting those projects funded because of that deep research and knowledge of knowing how they work and how they move the needle for brands.
Absolutely. I would add to that as well, coming up with a common vernacular, coming up with a way to talk about it and a common measuring stick, because profit is easy. It's a number, right? It's either positive or negative. It's a number, and it's something that executives can look at and say, this is good or bad. Whereas in the past, it's been, okay, well, there's these metrics and coming up with something simple. This is a lot of how we work with clients, using that common measuring stick to look at experience by experience. This is what's working. This is what's not. Here's how we invest in it. I think that's a huge one, and looping, as you both said, looping in the whole organization, different key parts of the organization into that metric. Everyone, we're 5 minutes over. I can't believe it went that fast.
Oh,
I know, right? I was like, oh, we'll get some more questions, but thank you both, Cynthia and Christian, for joining. This has been wonderful. Thank you to everybody who joined us for the conversation. Everyone have a wonderful rest of the week, and talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.